Everybody, welcome back to Men Do Therapy, a show dedicated to men on their journey to mental wellness. Today, we are talking about the opioid crisis and a recent conference I went to, all right? Let's get it. Hey y'all, welcome back to Men Do Therapy. I am your host, Rene Garcia. Really glad for you to be here today. Today we're going to be talking about the opioid crisis, but I got two things I want to cover. Number one, I am rocking my Men to Heal shirt. Let me stand up real quick so you can see the whole thing. Hey, shout out to James Harris of Men to Heal. He has a book out, a journal for helping men. Let's see, you can read that there. So if you're a clinician or if you're a man looking to have a book dedicated to you specifically, definitely check him out. He puts out great content on Instagram as well as YouTube. And the little bit I know about him, he has a really great story. And of course, you can get some swag, right? So shout out to James Harris and Men to Heal. Really great information. The other thing I want to cover before we get into the main topic today is I had a really great conference this past weekend. I was in Houston, got to go to my alma mater for the Life-Changing Conversations Conference. And I loved it. I was actually able to present about this whole Men Do Therapy thing and what I'm trying to do as far as assisting men getting mental health treatment and really kind of changing the perspective on how we look at men going to go get treatment. So it was awesome. I got some really great feedback, had some old supervisors and professors that were there. And I'm going to actually be presenting another one here in September. If you are a Texas, a licensed chemical dependency counselor, or you're looking to get some CEUs here in Texas, the Texas Association of Addiction Professionals, TAP for short, is doing their conference in San Antonio, I want to say mid-September. So come check me out. I'll be speaking on Saturday, and I'll be covering this whole thing that we're doing here, all right? So it was awesome. I love speaking in front of people, as you can imagine, and it's just something I really enjoy. All right. So enough about all that. What I wanted to do is really discuss this recent article that was put out by the alternative press about the opioid overdoses in the past year. So if you didn't get to check it out, I want to say it came out a little about a week ago or over the weekend as I was doing my conference, so I didn't have time to really check it out. And of course, and if you can't hear that, I actually live near an airport, so that's probably a plane in the background if you heard it. So sorry about that. So anyways, this article came out this past weekend. It actually, the main title of it is the U.S. overdose death hit 93,000 in pandemic last year. If you know anything about me, or if you've heard any of the show, seen some of our earlier episodes, I completely forgot the whole business side of it. If you haven't subscribed yet, please stop whatever you're doing, subscribe, turn on notifications. We have new shows pretty much weekly. Last week we screwed up, but this was my fault. But usually we have weekly shows. Please subscribe, turn on notifications, and check our content out, all right? The thing about this is that it really sticks out to me is that, this was where I started my career. I really started working in the chemical dependency field, or right now what we call the substance use disorder field. So more commonly known as just rehab for drugs and alcohol. It's a really interesting population. What I found out is that, for one, it's really difficult. It's not easy. You tend to have a lot of people who go into treatment and unfortunately have experiences that make them want to use, or they may not be in a place where they are able to stop using. And then, sometimes their bodies are just unable to kind of recover from a lot of the damage done by drugs or alcohol. So it can be a really tough position if you're a budding therapist and you're looking to go into the chemical dependency field. What I found out was that a lot of clinicians just don't like working in the field. And it may not be something that they choose to do, whether it be for personal reasons. It's just a tough experience. Like I said, it can sometimes weigh a lot on you emotionally. Or for two, people just don't want to go in there because it may, touch into something personal to them. Maybe they had someone in their life struggle with addiction or substance use disorder, and they just feel, this is just something they can't do. But what I found out is that, that was a really good space for me to go and grow and get a lot of information and really a lot of experience to where it opened a lot of doors for me. So that was a really good thing. The bad thing is, like I said, the work is really tough, and opioids to me, or opiates or opioids, whatever you want to call it. I feel like a lot of TV and a lot of news channels are using the term opioid, but I was always taught just opiates. Now, when people are actively using opiates, it's really tough. And I remember one of the earlier, this was back before I think fentanyl was really kind of a thing. Back then it was still heroin. We're starting to touch base into Dilaudid. I think what happens is people, it isn't just using anymore, right? And that to me is one of the many indicators that someone is having an issue with drugs or alcohol. The use is no longer just simply, I want to get high or I want to get intoxicated. I mean, the use sometimes becomes almost like a spiritual experience to where people are using so much that they really can't function. In other words, they're using just to get up to a functional level, or that it's the experience of creating the substance and then ingesting it, or using it in their body, whatever method they decide to use it. And so opioid to me, or opiates to me, was always the really tough ones, that people really built almost identities and personal relationships with these substances. And so this article to me really stood out. It was really tough to hear that, really right now, our overdose rate is about 93,000 just in the past year during the pandemic. And, the article goes into a lot of different things I wanted to touch on. But one of the things I think sticks out to me is that, it says lockdowns and other pandemic restrictions isolated those with drug addiction and made treatment harder to get, experts said. And this is really a true experience for me personally, is that, again, I had some clients that I would refer out while they're, referring to treatment. And, some facilities were very, again, they had these very strong rules. And as we all did, of, quarantining a certain amount of days, they're protecting the clients that were already in treatment. They were protecting the staff. And so they had to be really careful about who were admitting and who they were not admitting. And so unfortunately, that just turned into another barrier, right? Another barrier for us to not go into treatment or not to seek help. And really, when I say treatment for drugs and alcohol, they usually fall into like two main categories. And really the major one is abstinence-based programs. So what that means is that we're looking to remove substances from their life in a total way, in a totality way. So we want them to be sober from all mind-altering substances. I think the other method of treatment that's starting to get a little bit more information, a little bit more, I'm trying to think of the best way to say this, a little bit more popularity, I think, is what they call management, or, oh my gosh, I just went blank. The idea where people are actively using substances and they're actually managing the severity of it, right? So almost a control, or I'm going to think of it in a second. Once it comes to my mind, once I get onto something else, it's gonna pop up. But essentially, it's those are the two main programs that programs fall into here in the U.S. is abstinence-based or harm reduction. There it is. See, I just needed like a couple of seconds and I got it. Harm reduction is the other one that we're talking about. So a lot of the times, major insurance companies do cover more of the abstinence-based. I haven't really seen a harm reduction facility, but there are harm reduction methods of treating opiates. So this is where we start involving, other medications to help kind of titrate or wean somebody off the medication, which can happen in the detox level of care. But I wanted to go over this couple of statements that I got from the article. It was really well done. And it says, while prescription painkillers once drove the nation's overdose epidemic, they were supplanted first by heroin and then by fentanyl, a dangerously powerful opioid in recent years. Fentanyl was developed to treat intense pain from ailments like cancer, but increasingly has been sold illicitly and mixed with other drugs. So essentially what happens is the body is using so many of these opiates that essentially, like, it needs this really intense, really high level or really powerful drug in order to even have any kind of reaction, because we have used so much that our body is used to it. We've set kind of a tolerance, the same way that, you used to be able to eat 1 or 2 chicken nuggets, and now as you get older and you get more experience or you're more life underneath you and you start doing more things in your day to day, you say, well, I want some more chicken nuggets. Those kid meals just aren't going to handle it anymore. They're not going to cut it anymore. So the same thing with our bodies when we're actively using substances over and over again. We're having to keep seeking higher, stronger, or just more consistent usage of the drugs. And fentanyl, again, used for intense treatments, was designed for that. And we can talk a whole nother day about the politics behind the pharmaceutical companies and things like that. But the idea is that this substance was really designed for really intense treatments. And now it's being mixed and being sold illicitly, and people have a lot more access to it. And then as a result, on top of the pandemic, people are dying at a very high rate, right? And so the last thing I want to cover before I kind of just wrap up here is that there's no current evidence that more Americans started using drugs last year. Rather, the increased deaths most likely were people who had already been struggling with addiction. I think that's a really important point to pull from this. The idea that this a lot more times than not, it wasn't brand new users. It were people that were already struggling with something that just had not gotten treatment up to this point. So here's what I want you to take out of today's show. If there's somebody struggling with substances, even if you have the slightest hint, right? In my experience, there is a manipulative factor in the substance use disorder. In other words, anything the substance can do to allow it to continue and allow it to continue impacting the person's life, it will do it. This is lying, cheating, stealing, manipulating, whatever it is. That's the role, that's the job of the substance use disorder, the addiction. And so the idea is that if we have somebody in our lives that are struggling at this point, I encourage you to really do what we can to engage them in some form of treatment. I will sit here and say there's a lot of, and this was told to me back from my mentors, shout out to David Hanna and Susan Hanna, which I learned a lot of stuff from early on in my career, is that there's a lot of different paths to treatment, a lot of different paths to recovery. It's not just simply AA or NA. There's a lot of different ways that people can engage themselves in ways to treat the substance use disorder. But the idea is we have to be doing something. And as loved ones and family members, really, you all are the first line of defense to say, what can we do to help? And what can we do to address this person and really challenge this person that, we want them to really treat themselves and really treat this as a medical issue. And then I want to end in that. Listen, if you are the person struggling with a substance use disorder, this isn't a moral failing. You aren't a terrible person. You are being impacted by something chemically that's altering your body. It's a medical diagnosis. Therefore, we need some type of medical treatment to address it. All right? So let's decrease these deaths. Let's really kind of open this conversation up with the guys in our lives, and let's hopefully we can really save some lives moving into this 2021. We're basically halfway into 2022. All right? So if you found this helpful, please like, share, subscribe, share it with a friend, and we'll see you next week. All right? Take care.